The Death's Ritual Spear is yet another incredibly powerful weapon in Elden Ring that is capable of doing thousands upon thousands of damage. And today we're going to be taking a look at an extremely powerful build around this weapon so that you too can annihilate every single enemy in the lands between. So let's get straight into it. Now just very quickly, if you don't know how to get your hands on this weapon, all you need to do is defeat the Deathrite bird that is residing in the mountaintops of the giants, more specifically the one in this exact location. And let me preface this by saying that this is possibly one of the harder Deathrite birds to take on in the game, so I highly recommend that you come here once you've got some decent armor and a decent weapon, because otherwise you're going to have a real rough time trying to take this on. But once you defeat the Deathrite bird, you will then be granted with the Death's Ritual Spear. And as I showed you earlier, this thing can pack an absolute punch, especially when we utilize the unique Ash of War, the Spear Call ritual. This is because when you use said Ash of War, you will have a multitude of spears piercing through the sky down upon your enemies, which can allow you to deal anywhere upwards of 5,000 damage just with one use of that Ash of War. Of course, that damage output varies depending on your enemies, as this Ash of War is highly effective against the larger enemies like dragons or mainline bosses like Radahn, as you will be able to hit them with more spears, of course then doing more damage. And although the weapon is obtained fairly late game, the stats are actually very minimal in order to wield it. That's because you only need 14 strength, 20 dexterity and 18 intelligence. And as you can see with the scaling types on this weapon, intelligence is probably the worst stat that we can delve into, but it's actually the stat that we're going to delve the most in. So let me throw up the stats of this build for you now, and then I'll explain why that's the case. As you can see, we've got 50 points in vigor, 30 points in mind and 25 points in endurance, and then we've got the 14 points in strength and 20 in dexterity that's required to wield the weapon, before then pumping absolutely everything into intelligence. And again, just to clear up, I didn't put any points in faith or arcane, as it's not necessary for this build, which again allowed us to get us 80 points in intelligence. And although intelligence is the worst scaling factor on this weapon, it's actually the only stat that scales the Ash of War. That is because the Ash of War is pure magic damage, so it will work the same way as any other spell in the game. And that is ultimately the reason why we can do so much damage, because we can utilize all sorts of different buffs that the game has to offer. Now I'm also just going to very quickly point out that there are two ways you can utilize this weapon. The Spear Call ritual is essentially the same as the night sorceries in Elden Ring, meaning that you can take down enemies without them even noticing that you're there. This of course makes the Death Ritual Spear perfect for those of you that want to make a stealth build and pair this with spells like the Night Comet and Ambush Shard. But the other way, and the way that I've gone in this particular video, is purely for damage output and more of like a battle mage kind of build, utilizing other spells like Loretta's Mastery, Great Blade Phalanxes, and Stars of Ruin. When you pair the Death Ritual Spear with the latter combination of spells, you have an abundance of ranged attacks and ones that can also break your enemy's stances, allowing you to apply the pressure, deal thousands and thousands of damage in quick succession, all while breaking your enemy's poises, allowing for critical hits. This is ultimately the way to get the best damage output with this weapon, as you compare all of that with things like Terra Magica to just sit, either spam the spells or spam the Ash of War and just watch your enemy's health bar deteriorate. But of course, Terra Magica is not the only thing we're utilizing to boost the damage output, because we've also got a brilliant set of talismans that we're using as well. In fact, we're going to be using... What was that? Oh, it's just the sponsor bus cutting in to let us know about today's sponsor. And that is, of course, MMOEXP. Now for those of you that don't know, MMOEXP is the best place to buy in-game currencies and items, and they cover a plethora of different games. Elden Ring is one of those games, so if you're struggling to get yourself some runes, or you want to quickly grab yourself a specific item, MMOEXP have got you covered. And because we've partnered up together, you can use my code JAZZA to get 5% off of your purchases. Of course, there will be a link in the description if you're interested or you just want to have a browse around. And like I say, if you do end up purchasing, make sure you use the code JAZZA, J-A-Z-Z-A, to apply that discount. So thank you once again to MMOEXP for sponsoring today's video, but for now let's get back to it by showcasing you the amazing talismans for this build. So of course, first of all, we've got the Shard of Alexander, as where we are essentially spamming the absolute hell out of the Ash of War. This is perfect as it's going to increase the damage output with that particular attack, but then we're also pairing that with the Graven Mass Talisman, as that not only increases the damage with the skill power, but it also increases the damage with the sorceries as well. But again, that's not the only talisman doing that, as we're also equipping the Magic Scorpion Charm, again boosting all of the magic damage, so that's for the spells and the Ash of War, which of course is just creating an absolutely deadly combination. Before then we finish off the build with the Radagon's icon, and the reason why we've got this particular talisman is just where we haven't put anything into dexterity. The casting time of the spells is essentially at its very lowest, so to make up for that fact, that is why we're running Radagon's icon. I will just say, if you're not too fussed about the casting time, especially if you're using this build for PvE, you could potentially swap out the Radagon icon for something like the Dragon Crest Shield to boost your defense, as you'll be taking extra damage whilst equipping the Magic Scorpion Charm, or maybe even having something like the Ritual Swords Talisman, as that will again boost your damage output when you're at max HP. Either way, you'll be doing ridiculous numbers just with the stats and the talismans alone, but if you want to boost your damage output even further, you can also mix your Wonder Physic to have both the Magic Shroud in Crack tier and the Intelligence Not tier as well. The Magic Shroud in Crack tier will increase your magic damage by a further 20%, whilst you get an extra 10 points in Intelligence with the Intelligence Not tier as well. So essentially, once you've got all of that combined, you've got 3 different talismans granting a boost to your attack damage, an insanely high amount of Intelligence, and another 20% boost with the Wonder Physic. And if all that wasn't enough in terms of getting the best damage output, as you've probably seen throughout the video, you can also wear any of the glintstone masks to boost your intelligence even further, going even more overkill than you already were. But essentially, with all of that combined, you will have an insane intelligence build around the Death Ritual Spear that will deal thousands upon thousands of damage every time you use the Ash of War. Making this video was in fact the first time that I ever used this weapon, and I had an absolute blast whilst doing so. I know it's possibly not the most fun way to play the game, just spamming the absolute hell out of one attack, but it is still fun watching your enemy's health bars obviously deplete as quickly as it does when you use said attack. And if you ever do get bored of the Death Ritual Spear, you can effectively use every single spell that there is available in the game and switch up your playstyle just purely on the backup spells that you have. So like I said earlier, if you do want to go stealthy with it, you can do, but if you do also just want to go in gung-ho, maybe with the Gavel of Hamer or Cannon of Hamer, or use some ice spells like Rani's Dark Moon and the Moonblade, you can also do any of those as well just as effectively. No matter what route you go down, as long as you've got the Death Ritual Spear in your hand, you will at least have one attack that's capable of destroying any enemy in the game. So yeah, there you have it. That is the build that you can use around the Death Ritual Spear. And I know I didn't really focus too much on the Death Ritual Spear, and I was more talking about how you can utilize it with other spells as well, but that, like I say, is just purely because all you need to do with the Death Ritual Spear, whether you have buffs or not, is just spam the absolute hell out of the Ash of War, as that's going to be the main damage output. And I wanted to also just highlight just how well you can optimize this and put it in all sorts of different mage builds. So although it is a spam merchant, it can still be used in a very fun and exciting way. But again, as per usual, I am not the best Elden Ring player in the world, and I know that you guys are a lot better than me, so do let me know if there are any ways to obviously make this build even better, and also let me know if you enjoyed this video by hitting that like button down below. It's the quickest and easiest way to tell me you like these build videos and you want to see more of them. And if you've made it to the end of this video and you're new around here, or you find yourself coming back and you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you're also subscribed, as we're on our journey to 15,000 subscribers, which we can potentially do by the end of the month. But either way, I just want to say a huge thank you to those of you that have made it to the end of the video, because I really do appreciate you watching all the way through. Of course, go have an absolute blast with this weapon and let me know how you get on, and I guess I'll catch you in the next video of whatever it is that we make. Bye bye.